Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is another video on 5090 O-Level Biology, June 21, paper 2-2. I've discussed the first three questions of the section A in the previous video, and now this is the second video, which is after that first one. Now this is the June 21, paper 2-2, 1 hour 45 minutes. We've done these three questions. Now we're going to go on the fourth question. Now the fourth question is, cardiopulmonary resuscitation (CPR) is a first aid procedure. Air is forced into a patient's lungs by another person. The heart is made to pump blood by repeated compression of the patient's chest over the heart. You can see this happening here, and how we're going to press on the heart over the heart. A person performing CPR on a patient is shown in the diagrams. Part A1, state what will be seem to happen to the patient's chest when air is forced into the lungs. Well, what seems to happen means it will rise. Or you could have said expands. So rises or expands, and that was the word. Or you could have used some other alternative wording as well. They were allowed. So this is what you should have said. Then it says, name in the correct order the tubes through which air will travel from the patient's mouth to the alveoli of the lungs. Now, of course, it makes it a little simple that where would it arise? It would rise from the larynx, or if you said trachea, well, that was allowed as well. Uh, and then, of course, you would have said bronchi or bronchi, or you could have said even bronchus was correct as well. And then, of course, this one would have been bronchioles. So larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchus, or bronchioles would have got you your 2 marks. The air forced in the patient's lung has different concentration of gases compared to the air the patient would normally breathe in. State two differences in the concentration. Naturally, the person is getting his exhaled air. So the air forced into the lungs, the person who's exhaling, the air forced into the lungs will be how will it be different? Of course, it's going to be different. It's going to be different because there'll be less oxygen in it. Because this person is exhaled air has less oxygen. Because you see, this is part of the syllabus, the differences between inhaled and exhaled air. So it will have less oxygen, it will have more carbon dioxide. It will have more carbon dioxide because exhaled air is now the carbon dioxide from the aerobic respiration in the cells is passed into the blood and then is passed into the alveoli, and you are exhaling it out. And it will have more water vapors because the film of moisture in the alveoli evaporates and the exhaled air is saturated with water vapors. And then coming to the B part of the question, explain how each action of the CPR procedure will benefit the patient. Air forced into the patient's lungs and repeated compression of the patient's chest. Naturally, when you are exhaling it, oxygen is entering the lungs or the alveoli or the air sacs, and the oxygen will enter the blood, and of course it will enter the hemoglobin and form oxyhemoglobin, and it's going to diffuse in. So then what are you going to do? So there's going to be naturally diffusion gradient will be established. Then blood from the left ventricle will be carrying, of course, more oxygenated blood, and blood will go to the organs of the tissue cells. And of course, aerobic respiration will occur. And the compression of the chest is going to result in restarting the heart. So pressing on the chest is going to probably give a little bit of push to the heart and restart the heart. So there are more points and you can see that there are no separate marks here and for here. The total thing is 4 marks. So there's no demarcation that okay, you've got to give me how many points here and how many points here. As long as you wrote all these, there are 8 mark scheme points, and you have to give me any 4 of them. Now, this might appear a little unfair to you, is that they've given you these headings, and I know you wouldn't have thought of points which fitted into the repeated compression of the patient's chest. Basically, when it's pressing on the chest, it is just trying to make the heart work. And make the heart work means pushing the blood out of the ventricles into the aorta so that the blood is carried around the body and it reaches the body organs. And why do we need all that to be reaching the body organs? Is basically for aerobic respiration. So when you look at the points, I mean, some you might think it's not fair. I agree with you. I don't think it's fair. The two headings were a little confusing, and they would have resulted in a few students really messing this up. So oxygen into the lungs, oxygen enters the blood, it enters by diffusion down the concentration gradient. So that would have, in fact, writing those 4 points would have got you the 4 out of 4 in the question. Then blood from the left ventricle is carrying blood to the organs and the aerobic respiration and the restart of the heart. So you can see how the 8 mark scheme points, but any 4 of these would have got you the 4 out of 4, which teaches you a very important lesson is that you write more, even though you think it may not be a mark scheme point, but if it's irrelevant, there's no negative marking. So please remember that you should be very careful when attempting section A. You have to be intelligent, you have to be smart, you have to have a lot of common sense to realize that, okay, well, let me write it, even if it's wrong. Well, I'm not going to get any negative marks for it. So that finishes section A. Now we go on to, oh no, there's another question still left. Question 5 is still there. The diagram shows villi in the small intestine. Outline the process by which named molecules are absorbed from the contents of the small intestine into the blood. And that is for another 6 marks. And then let's go back and let's go back on the question. Now, as it says, named molecules are absorbed from the contents of the small intestine. So you've eaten anything, bread, rice, biryani, anything. So water enters by osmosis, glucose and amino acids by diffusion, glucose by active transport against the concentration gradient. It requires energy. It's an active process. This is a syllabus point which you are supposed to be knowing. And through the cell membrane and into the capillaries, or you could have said plasma or tissue fluid. So it was 6 marks, but Cambridge seems to have done a misprint here. And this total 6 marks was not written here, because if you look at any other question, the total is always written at the bottom. And this was a very big confusion, which I think they've done. When I'm looking at this paper for the first time, and I noticed this, and I realized that maybe I was going wrong, and I thought maybe this is something I've gone wrong. But there was a total 6 marks is missing. Now, coming to section B, answer both questions in this section. We all know that. Write your answers in the spaces provided. The diagram shows a human life cycle. The components of the diagram are not drawn to the same scale. The diagram shows cells L, M, and N, two types of cell division K and O. L and M are both the same type of cell. Name this type of cell. Now let's look at it very carefully, this diagram. L is the sperm and M is the ovum. So what are this type of cell? They're gametes. And then fertilization takes place, and N, and then O and K. Outline the differences between the nucleus of cell M. M, as you know, is the ovum, and L, as you know, is the sperm. So it says, but it's not asking you that. It's asking you the differences between the nucleus of cell M and the nucleus of cell N. Cell N is the zygote. So what are they expecting that you should know? The fact that the ovum would be haploid and the zygote would be diploid. So that would be one part. It says M haploid. M is the ovum, so it would only have the X chromosome. While this diploid cell can either be an XX or it can be an XY. So N is diploid. It has 23 pairs of chromosomes while M is haploid. And I could have also asked you the differences. I would have liked to ask you the differences between M and L. M will always have an X, while L can be of two types. Sperms can be of two types. They can either have the X chromosome or they can have the Y chromosome. So just think of another question which I could have also put this on to. So outline the differences between the nucleus of cell M and N. So, I mean, M haploid, M only X chromosome, N diploid, N could have been either, because the zygote could have been either XX or XY. Because if the sperm is Y, then the zygote will be XY. Because if the ovum is always X, but the sperm can be an X, so then the zygote will be XX. But the ovum is X and the sperm is Y, then the zygote is going to be XY. Then part C says name and compare the types of cell division K and O. Now, where was K happening? Let's look at that. K was happening here. K has to be meiosis because it's the sperm and the ovum developing. So this has to be meiosis. And then fertilization, and then O. O would be then, of course, mitosis, because as soon as the zygote forms, then the zygote starts to divide by mitosis. And then, of course, it forms a ball of cells. And then this ball of cells is going to develop into a human being. So K meiosis, O mitosis. But then for meiosis, you have to give me more points. So meiosis reduction division, chromosome number halved, 46 to 23, diploid to haploid, 4 daughter cells formed, genetically different cells takes place in the testes and the ovaries. So you have to realize this for 6 marks, this would get you 1 or 2, and then 2 or 3 points from here, and then of course you have to give me some points for mitosis as well. So for mitosis, you would say chromosome number is maintained, diploid to diploid, they're genetically identical and they're needed for growth, and 2 daughter cells are formed. So you can see it's a very good comparison between meiosis and mitosis. So I'm sure it will help you in your revision, and I'm sure it will help you in the coming exam. Question 7. The diagram shows structures involved in reflex action that results in removal of a person's hand from a sharp object. Before removal, after removal. Now you can see here we're seeing the spinal cord, we're seeing the receptor here. So the receptor, so this is the sensory neuron which is going here, and then to synapses with the relay, and then the motor neuron goes to the muscle. M motor, M muscle, and there's a sharp object. Name and state the function of structure P. What is structure P? Is a sensory neuron. So the sensory neuron got you 1 mark. And then where is it going? Name and state the function of structure P. So it is going from the receptor. This here is, there would be a receptor in the skin which is going to be, so from the receptor. Then structure R is the motor neuron. Now the motor neuron is going to be carrying what? It's going to be carrying to the muscle, or you could have said the biceps muscle. So it is going to be going to the biceps muscle. So motor neuron is carrying impulses to the biceps muscle, and a mark is there for the impulse. So there are, you can see there are 4 marks, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mark scheme points. So if you wrote sensory neuron carries impulses from the receptor, motor neuron carries impulses to the muscles or the biceps muscle, well, you got your 4 out of 4. Very simple. Describe the location of structure Q. Where is Q? Let's see. Let's look at Q. Where is Q? Q is this. Q is the relay neuron. Now, where is the structure Q? It's in the nervous system. Where is it? You could have said CNS. That's allowed, central nervous system. Or you could have said, I don't know, I don't teach gray matter. But if you knew that, fine. But central nervous system was fine. And spinal cord was fine. So that is the thing which we expected you to know. The spinal cord and the central nervous system, or the, you could have said CNS, the abbreviation was allowed, or you could have written the whole of it, central nervous system. Then B part, explain how the action of structure S results in the movement of bones at a named type of joint. Now, what is structure? What was structure S? Structure S was the biceps muscle. So the biceps muscle, what is this going to be its role? Let's look at that. So action of structure S results in the movement of bone. So basically biceps result on the hinge joint, because it's saying name type of joint. Name type of joint. So hinge joint, and what is going to happen is this muscle is going to contract. I've always told you many times, muscles can only contract and relax. So contracts and it will pulls the radius and the ulna, which is because it said movement of bones. So it's going to move the radius and ulna, which is in the not in the upper arm but in the forearm, and up towards the humerus. Up towards the humerus. That is the movement that is shown to you in the diagram. Or away from, or up towards the humerus, or away from also. It is also called flexion away from the pin or the stimulus. C. Answer either question 8 or question 9. Write your answers in the space provided. State the functions of the human liver and explain the importance to a person of each function. Very direct question, and that is for total 10 marks. So this was a very, very long question, and it's only 10 marks, and it's a very basic question. Let's look at all the mark scheme points. Little discussion on the functions. I think it's a very profound question. Number one, the liver produces bile. And what does the bile do? It emulsifies the fats or the lipids, and this, of course, increases the digestion of lipids. It becomes very, very quickly done because then the lipase can act on it. It increases the surface area for the lipase to act. Then deamination of amino acids. What does that result in? Formation of urea. Then we know that liver is this again part of the syllabus point, breakdown of alcohol. But then if you remember in your chapter on respiration, lactic acid is also taken to the liver, and there, of course, it's converted back to glucose and respired. So breakdown of alcohol and lactic acid if it is produced during strenuous exercise. Then hormones are that's again a syllabus point, breakdown of hormones. So hormones with like insulin works and then it has to be removed from the system. Otherwise, it will keep on working and the blood glucose will fall. So breakdown of hormones, and this prevents the continued effect of hormones. Hormones should not work. There's some short-acting hormones and some long-acting hormones. The hormones must be removed. They can't keep on working. That will, of course, result like people who want to commit suicide, inject themselves with insulin, and that will kill them. Then the glucose is converted to glycogen in the liver, and that is what? Energy stored. The glycogen is an energy store. And then the glycogen is insoluble, so it does not affect the water potential of the cells. Because if you had too much glucose, you've eaten a lot of roti or you've eaten a lot of rice, and all that is converted to glucose. So too much glucose in the cells would affect the water potential of the cells. So a safe bet is to convert the glucose to glycogen, and this glycogen is insoluble. Then the liver has a very high metabolic rate, and there's a lot of heat production. So the liver is one of the major heat producing organs of the body. Then the breakdown of hemoglobin or the red blood cell results in the iron being stored in the liver. That's why we ask you to eat chicken livers and all to get iron. And of course, liver is also a place where vitamins are stored. So storage of vitamins also occur in the liver. So this is a total 10 mark, and that was a lethal 10 marks. And you needed to really get those 10 marks and write. There are about 16 mark scheme points, and any 10 of these would get you your 10 out of 10, and in any sequence. I'm not saying in the same order in which I've written them. First question, question number 9. Describe the large-scale production of a named antibiotic and explain the importance of each stage of the process. And the named antibiotic naturally is penicillin. And how would you grow it? Of course, you would grow it in a fermenter. And fermenter, you'd have to give me all those points about the fermenter. But the named fungus would be penicillin, and the fungus. Basically, we needed the name of the fungus as well, so that is penicillium. So penicillin is the name of the antibiotic. The name of the fungus is penicillium. So if you mentioned that, then of course, how would you grow it? Large scale production, how would you grow it? And the importance of each stage. So fermenter, then sterilized to prevent any contamination. The fermenter must not have any other organism, microorganism, like it shouldn't have any other bacteria or even other fungal spores or anything in it. So it has to be sterilized with steam or something to kill all those. Then glucose is added because the organism, the fungus, is going to need it for respiration, for the release of energy. Then proteins and amino acids are needed for the growth of it, because naturally, if you've added 1 gram of it, you want it to grow to 2 to 4 to 8 grams, and then it's going to be producing that antibiotic for us. So proteins and amino acids for growth, oxygen into the fermenter for aerobic respiration, a paddle for stirring or mixing the nutrient in the organism, then the sparger to increase the surface area, and for controlling the temperature, you needed to control it between 25 and 45. You needed to remove the carbon dioxide because the carbon dioxide would form carbonic acid. This would lower the pH and it would make it acidic, and then it would not work. The organisms' enzymes would not work. And in order for the enzymes organisms to work best, you maintain both the temperature and the pH. And this is to get maximum growth in a short amount of time. And then, of course, once it's grown and then everything is the nutrients and finished, then it's going to result in the releasing the antibiotic. And then, of course, you purify the antibiotic, meaning that you separate the organisms and you separate the chemical which it is producing, the antibiotic, or you can purify it or extract it or filter it or crystallize it. So any of those would have been correct. Now, this was again a good question, and you needed to know all these points. And this was, of course, name antibiotic. Now, this, of course, was all for again 10 marks. And for 10 marks, you need to give me more points so that you ensure that you get your 10 out of 10. Now, the mark scheme points were actually 14, and any 10 of them would get you your 10 out of 10. So the point is you write a lot, and even if it's irrelevant, but you write it. And then, of course, you see that you write your 10 points to get at least 8 or 9 out of 10. That finishes this video. Thank you very much. This video has all the remaining parts of this paper, and this paper has been completed here. It has the question part of section A and section B and section C all have been solved in this paper, in this video. Thank you very much.